Now we take 12 minutes on this sheet. Do you all have one? A half sheet called From the Pastor's Viewpoint. A view from the pastor. Anybody need one? Thanks to Judy for getting these out. Let me go down through these. And when we formed this, the committee asked me to just share something related from a pastor. Bill is very pastoral, but this is just from the practicing pastor's viewpoint. Number one, this may be our highest priority and our greatest contribution to the church, our spiritual life. No matter how we talk about it or how we say it, this is crucial, and I pastored just 2 churches, 41 years, and now I've been coaching for 10 years of pastors. When I left both churches, it was under good circumstances. Nobody said anything about the terrific series I did every May on the family. I did an eschatology series in both churches that kind of solved all the problems of the future. The charts are there if you'd like to see them. Nobody said a thing about that, but people would talk about how I spoke about my wife or how she treated me or issues related to talking to people in wheelchairs. I'm not bragging, I'm saying your life shares so much, and your spirit toward God is contagious. It may be the biggest thing you contribute to your church. Number 2, we need spiritual vitality, motivation, of course, for the rigors of leading and caring for our people. Pastors work as hard as the manager of McDonald's, and often in our staff at the chapel, when somebody would complain about work hours or special needs, manage a restaurant sometime, I would say, because we had some people that managed McDonald's and other restaurants or owned them. Same is true in many different jobs. The point, though, is a lot of what we do is spiritual in nature, as that's our whole subject today, related to prayer, but also is combative. There are people in about half of our churches who are mean. Raise your hand if they go to your church. And part of what we have to do, 2 Timothy, Paul talks about people that differ with us or people with bad doctrines, and the issue is you teach patiently and kindly. But just before that, it says, flee these lusts, youthful lusts. I'm 77. Youthful lusts leave you at about page 85, I think, somewhere around there. They haven't left me yet. But keep working on that reminder that to go out in the front and to do what LeBron does. I shouldn't probably use him right now. He's in a slump. But somebody else who does it, everything happens in the weight room and back in the practice times. Number 3, sermon prep. This is debatable, but please agree with me today. Sermon prep should help our spirits every week. 3 hearts of preaching. This is sort of a hobby horse. The heart of God, that's figure it out. That's hermeneutics. That's your study. The second heart is your heart. It's got to grip your heart. And that's where being a pastor has a wonderful asset. And I know it can be a danger. We can just do it rote or barely. But it also can equip us and enlarge our hearts every week if we take it personally. In coaching pastors, I watch a lot of sermons, and not long ago I watched one, and I did what I've done about 10 times with sermons, maybe not that many, and he asked me what I thought of it, and I said it was okay. And he pushed me on it. Well, what are you saying? What's the critique? It was okay. It was true. Any questions? And I was trying to say there was nothing passionate about what you said. It didn't sound like you really believed it. I could sell a sweeper that way. I am not passionate about Eureka or the other sweepers. I don't even know any. And I don't care. It's got to grip my heart. And the point positive here is let that happen as you study all week. I grew up with debates. I still hear them once in a while. Does your study of Scripture for a sermon count as devotional time? Well, first, who's keeping records? And secondly, of course, it should change your heart. So it doesn't matter. Use the Bible for yourself, but every time you're studying for a talk or an ABF lesson and a sermon, let it grab you and change you, of course. That's work for all of us. The third heart is, of course, the heart of the listeners. That may be the hardest one, but that's keeping their attention and working hard. But my real point here is sermons can and should help all of us spiritually in the very things that Bill is talking about today. Number 4, prayer partners. My wife, Janine, would tell you that the best thing we ever did at the chapel, 26 years, was in 1987. We asked for 87 men, women pray enough, 87 men to be prayer partners with me for the church and for character. 2 things. And we met every Friday morning early on, 6:30, just till 7:20, 7:15 or 7:20. They only came once a month, though about half of them came every Friday who could. And I came every Friday, and we prayed for character and the church, nothing else. I showed them what Sunday was about, and they went over it, and so they owned Sundays that way. Most of them told me they prayed for me every day, but their promise was to pray for me on the day of their birthday each month. So if you were born on the 15th. And I would pray for them on the day of their birthday. I just beg you to get men, if you're a man pastor, or women, if you're a woman pastor, and whatever we are, to have people who pray with you and for you and back and forth. And in that Friday time, we were only allowed to pray for character, not surgeries. That's for Wednesday and groups. And related to that, number 5, I was in a ABF the other day. I get maybe 1 out of 10 Sundays off to go to the church up here in Michigan where we live. And I was in an ABF, Adult Bible Fellowship, and there were 16 prayer requests. I counted them. I know I was being critical. And they were all surgeries or accidents. If I have a surgery or an accident, please pray for me. But somewhere, how do we talk about character and the church and evangelism and big issues like the world and mission? PRAY helped our people no end. Praise, repent, which includes confession, ask, and yield. I just say this to challenge you who are pastors. There are no pastoral prayers in most churches. Bill talked about that, an allusion to that a moment ago. We need to model it. I know most churches are built around what Matt Chandler said or what a music guy did. But at the same time, this is the deepest pastoral prayer I've heard in the last 3 months as a guest speaker. This is the guitar player. Dear God, I love that song. That was a cool song for me this week when I was depressed. And I told the pastor afterwards, I don't care how that guy liked that song. He thought I was being mean, and I was. But that's not a pastoral prayer. That's an impromptu few thoughts about the song and my guitar playing. Model pastoral prayer. Do PRAY. They won't even know you're doing it. But then you teach it so that in groups they're not all surgeries and accidents. Indeed, pray for anything. But teach people to pray for issues of their heart and their mission in life. There's a whole paper on PRAY and how to lead a group. You got to stay in charge of the group. And then I loved what Bill said about pray what's on your heart. They divide into groups of 4 or 5, and they don't give requests. They pray for something that they're worried about, and somebody else near them backs it up. Yes, Lord, help Dick with that issue and his grandchild. And that way you pray for each other. It's so simple, but it got all our groups away from just praying about physical. We do it when our grandkids are there, and we take turns and asking, pray for something you're worried about, and it can be very, very healthy. I was at a pastor's conference recently, and I urged them all, this is the simplest thing I can say about praying. I urged them to always, at the meal, pray with them and their wife. And a number of the guys have written to me and said, we never did that before, where one of them prays and then the other prays. And that necessarily is not PRAY, but just the little thing of always being together, and it's just a healthy thing. You decide. These are what have helped me as a pastor. Number 6, accountability. Most pastors I get to know, I'm coaching a guy in Florida and 5 pastors there, and none of them have an accountability partner. I just urge you to have another pastor. I think in most churches it needs to be somebody outside the church, not always. And it's not your wife, it's not your husband. It's somebody who's in the same job you are, where you can be accountable once a year, swear, just somebody that can be that candid. I mean, a really nice, say, oh my, or something like that. You could do that much unless you're really Baptist, and then it's going to be hard. But I would say damn once a year. It was so easy, it's so refreshing for me. I don't know if that's bad, Bill, but once a year with my best friend, I would say that word. I spelled it D-A-M, not with an N. And it was a great tension, and I was fine for another year. But if you don't have somebody where you can be candid or say, I looked at a woman the wrong way, if you're a man, or back and forth if you're a woman. But if you don't have somebody who say, I'm really mad at somebody, angry at somebody on our board or on staff, and who can be candid with you. Number 6 is accountability. Pastors need that. Number 7, preaching and pastoring will get old without your spirit being in it. So, you know that. It's hardly a new thought, but sometimes you know the passion is gone to love people, the real life kind of thing. And so what we're saying today, what Bill's saying, he's a master at this, and a very candid person. If your spirit isn't behind it and strong, it does get old. We can all do the work just by mechanics. You know that. I've done that plenty of times. When we had multiple sermons, I'd often do the first sermon and think this is bad. And under my breath, I'm looking out and they're bored, and I'm thinking, they get to go home. I got to do it 3 more times. I look down and my wife's asleep on the second row, and she loves me. Once Ed was there at our service, he laid down on the pew. And Number 8, some of you, if you're under 40, don't know the plumber's story. It used to be told all the time, but the plumber whose plumbing at home was not fixed, but he took care of everybody else. And every pastor knows that feeling, what about me at home? And what about our family? And just the huge issue, a lot of that is related to our spiritual life. Those are 8 things that have helped me. Thank you.